This video will discuss the history of Michigan legislative composite photographs and some of the legislative photography that goes along with it. Legislative portrait photography in Michigan dates to as early as the 1860s. The Senate was photographed in 1863 by an unidentified local photographer. Sets of legislative portrait photographs were taken continually into the 1870s. The first known composite of either chamber is an 1873 Senate composite executed by Lansing photographer Benjamin Franklin Hall. Here, Hall mounted each albumin photo individually to an oversized card backing. Additionally, the penmanship was carried out by W. H. Burdick, including the names of each senator, their district numbers, and flourishes around the words Michigan Senate. We see the influence of the flourishes on this composite in modern composites of the Michigan Senate, like this one from 1991. Photographic portraits of members of the legislature became routine. In nearly every session since the 1870s, individual portraits and composite photographs have been produced of the Michigan legislature. Here, in 1879, the first legislature to work in our current capital, we see a single albumin print featuring the 100 members of the Michigan House of Representatives. Nods to the chamber layout help us see the back chamber railing and a doorway to the cloakroom. Members are pictured in order of seating assignments with their district numbers. The center aisle leads us to the front of the chamber, the largest photo being Speaker John T. Rich, surrounded by the clerks of the House of Representatives. This composite was the first of two done by Lansing photographer John Harvey Scottford. House composites keep a consistent appearance through time. These 19th century house composites were executed by Lansing Photo Studios, the 1881 by Scottford, and the 1885 by Cassian Whitney. For much of the history of the legislature, local photographers took the initiative to photograph the legislature and produce these composites. It became good business to be associated with the legislature, and having a photo studio in Lansing meant vying for that job. Ultimately, just a few photographers over the years gained that association and became quite successful, whether because of the consistent work or because of their high-quality products. Not all composites are the large format boards we have seen so far or think of traditionally. Composites were also produced as cabinet cards and real photo postcards. These are more practical versions of the composites, and while there may have only been a handful of the large format boards produced, there may have been greater numbers of the cabinet cards and postcards, seen as easier souvenirs to take home with each member. Also shown here is an 1883 house composite pasted into a Michigan manual. Lansing collector and historian Orion Austin Jennison owned the most complete set of manuals in private hands in the 1880s. He purchased duplicates of the manuals in this period and customized them by pasting the albumin composite prints into blank pages that he tipped into the volumes. Jennison's collection has been with the Library of Michigan since 1895, where today you can view not only a pristine manual collection, but also his customization and, in some instances, the only known example of certain composites. By the early 20th century, the legislature got one of its most consistent photographers to date in Ralph Ellison. Ellison came to Lansing in 1893 from Detroit to open his own studio, and he quickly became involved with the legislature, capturing portraits of all representatives and senators for more than 40 years, from the 1890s through about 1940. Ellison was known as the picture man of the legislature. His work photographing the House and Senate was all but official for 4 decades, and he was said to be personally acquainted with every member of the legislature over the course of those 40 years. In the midst of his career, in 1929, the legislative portraits began appearing officially in the Michigan manuals as subcomposites, broken down into groupings of 5 to 10 members per page across multiple pages. Composites are important tools to track the legislature. Here we see Lieutenant Governor Thomas Reed in 1923, who in the last composite was the Speaker of the House. Senate composites transform through time, but we see the consistent inclusion of clerks and secretaries in addition to the membership. This 1949 House composite is typical of the era. The House continued to include its numerous clerks on its composites through 1964, after which they were omitted in favor of just the clerk and assistant clerk. Historically, and as is tradition today on composites, the House is numbered by seat number and the Senate is numbered by district number. This is due in part to the old House county-based district system. Following Ellison's stint as the photographer to the legislature, another Lansing studio took on that role. The LeClaire studio photographed the representatives and senators and produced composites from the 1940s through the 1960s. In this photo, we see Ralph and Nettie LeClaire, second-generation owner-operators of the LeClaire studio, at work finishing orders in their studio. Behind them are packaged finished photos, including a large house composite board, which we can clearly identify as the 1953-1954 Michigan House of Representatives. LeClaire also produced several of these alphabetical composites in the 1940s, which dropped the seating order in favor of a horizontal orientation and arrangement by last name. LeClaire photographed the legislature through the mid-1960s. For the following decade, members either supplied their own portrait to the clerk or secretary, or in some cases, caucus communications staff photographed the members. The first use of color photos was in 1973. By the mid-1970s, the legislative caucuses began employing staff photographers, and by 1984, all 4 caucuses had full-time staff photographers, which took members' portraits and assembled the composites, as practice is today. Composites can sometimes give us a glimpse of things that were important to each session. In 1987, the House of Representatives chose to feature Michigan's sesquicentennial logo in the center of their composite. And in 1993, the 55-55 split House of Representatives led to shared power and co-speakers of the House. At the top of this composite, notice 2 of each leadership position and the lack of majority or minority terminology. By the 21st century, Senate composites begin to evolve. They start to include photographic backgrounds centered around the Capitol. This 2007 composite shows the exterior of the building. And even more recently, by 2019, we step inside the Capitol and start to see the interior of the Senate chamber featured as a backdrop on their composites. Historically, we have found legislative composites all over the Capitol. The old 3-story state library that was once housed in the West Wing had its mezzanine dotted with composites spanning the decades of its time in the building. Here, Lieutenant Governor Thomas Reed stands in his Capitol office, the walls of which are decorated with Senate composites from years prior. These could have been regular decor for the Lieutenant Governor's office or personal mementos of Reed's, as he had been a state senator. Composites graced office walls throughout the building. This view of a small overfloored office off the Senate chamber shows Senate composites framed on the walls surrounding a desk, which was part of a photographer's darkroom built in the 1940s. For many years, the House of Representatives displayed its composites in the northeast corner of its chamber. These were large, framed copies of the House composite, not unlike what we see outside the chamber today. They were moved outside the chamber in the 1970s as a more useful location. Among the main purposes of a composite is as an aid to constituents visiting the Capitol. Composites work like a map of the House floor, helping visitors locate the seat of their legislator on the floor. Today, House and Senate composites greet visitors on the second floor lobby outside each legislative chamber. Though, the Senate has modernized with a screen and a digital version of their composite. Thanks for viewing, and we hope you learned a little bit about Michigan legislative composites and photography. And please don't hesitate to reach out to the Michigan State Capitol Tour Education and Information Service with any questions or comments.